Mayones. Mayones has been building guitars in the Polish port city of Gdansk since 1982, run by the same family across generations, and for most of its history, almost nobody outside Poland knew it existed. That changed when modern metal players discovered the brand's multi-scale and extended-range instruments, built with a level of finish work that rivals custom shops charging twice as much. Misha Mansour of Periphery and John Brown of Monuments helped turn Mayones into one of the most respected names in progressive metal, and the brand's Regis model became something of a uniform in that scene. Every guitar is still built in the Gdansk workshop rather than farmed out to overseas factories, and waiting lists stretch months. A company that spent decades as Poland's local secret ended up defining what a modern metal guitar looks like. The family still signs off on instruments personally, a detail that survived the brand going global. Eastman. Eastman started in 1992 as a violin company, founded by Qian Ni, a Chinese flute player who came to America to study music and ended up building an instrument empire. The company applied violin-making techniques to guitars, hand-carved tops, hand-applied varnish, and workshops where individual luthiers build instruments largely by hand rather than on production lines. That approach let Eastman sell hand-carved archtops and solid wood acoustics at prices the old American brands couldn't touch, and jazz players noticed first. The brand's reputation grew almost entirely by word of mouth, with players discovering that a guitar built in Beijing by violin makers could compete with instruments costing 3 times more. Eastman has since expanded into electrics with its antique varnish finishes, and the brand that started with student violins now gets mentioned in the same breath as builders with a century of head start. Guitar magazines that once ignored Chinese manufacturing now hand Eastman awards, a shift that says as much about the industry as about the brand. Larrivée. Larrivée was founded in 1967 by Jean Larrivée, a Canadian luthier who learned classical guitar building, and then applied that precision to steel string acoustics. The company became famous for its symmetrical parabolic bracing, a design choice that produces a balanced, articulate tone, distinct from the bass-heavy Martin formula most builders copied. Larrivée also pioneered using lasers for inlay work earlier than most of the industry, and the ornate headstock inlays on its higher models became a signature. The company eventually split production between Canada and California, with the family still running everything. Among fingerstyle players and recording engineers, Larrivée guitars have a quiet reputation as some of the best recording acoustics ever made, even if the brand never chased the mainstream fame of its American rivals. Jean Larrivée himself still hand-selects woodstock, decades into the company's life, and the brand's used instruments hold value with a stubbornness that says more than any advertisement could. Duesenberg. Duesenberg builds guitars in Hanover, Germany, wrapped in an Art Deco visual identity so distinct you can recognize one from across a stadium. Founded by designer Dieter Gohlsdorf, the brand mixes vintage-style construction with genuinely original engineering, including its own tremolo and pickup designs rather than copies of American hardware. The look, all chrome, stripes, and 1930s automobile styling, borrowed its name from the classic Duesenberg cars, and the guitars became favorites of players who wanted vintage tone without playing the same strat as everyone else. Ron Wood of the Rolling Stones and members of countless Americana bands adopted them, and the brand's Star Player TV became its calling card. Duesenberg proved there was still room for a completely new visual language in an industry that mostly recycles designs from the 1950s. Suhr. Suhr was founded by John Suhr, a repairman and builder who spent years working at Rudy's Music in New York, where he co-built the Pensa Suhr guitars Mark Knopfler played on stage. He then spent time at the Fender Custom Shop building. Instruments for professionals before leaving in the late 1990s to start his own company in California. Suhr guitars became the quiet choice of session players, the people whose names you don't know but whose playing you've heard on hundreds of records, because the instruments are built to be flawless tools rather than fashion statements. The company machines its own hardware, winds its own pickups, and holds tolerances most factories don't attempt. Among working professionals, a Suhr is shorthand for a guitar with no excuses built in. The company also became a serious amp and pedal maker along the way, quietly turning into a full-rig brand for players who care more about consistency than mystique. Kiesel. Kiesel is what became of Carvin, the California company covered in a previous video, after the founding family split the business in 2015. One side kept the audio equipment, while Jeff Kiesel took the guitar operation and renamed it after his grandfather Lowell Kiesel, who had started the whole company back in 1946. Freed from the old catalog company image, Kiesel went all in on direct-to-consumer custom building. Headless guitars, multi-scale fanned frets, exotic tops, all ordered online, built to spec in California, and sold with no dealer markup. The move landed perfectly with a generation of players who buy everything online anyway, and Kiesel's build times and prices became genuinely difficult for traditional custom shops to compete with. Custom options that would cost thousands elsewhere became checkbox upgrades on a website form. A 70-year-old family company reinvented itself as one of the most modern guitar operations in America. Suhr. Suhr was founded in 2017 by Ola Englund, a Swedish guitarist who built an audience reviewing amps and guitars on YouTube before deciding to make his own. Englund had played in the Haunted and Feared and knew exactly what modern metal players wanted, so Suhr guitars shipped with everything already correct. Aggressive shapes, high output pickups, stainless frets on many models, and matte black everything. The brand sells directly online at prices that undercut comparable factory customs, and Englund's own channel functions as a permanent product demo. Suhr became proof that a YouTuber with genuine credibility could bypass the entire traditional guitar industry, no dealers, no distributors, no decades of brand building, and carve out a real company in a few years. The guitars themselves earned respect fast enough that the brand outgrew the novelty of its origin. Strandberg. Strandberg started as a one-man project in Uppsala, Sweden, where engineer Ola Strandberg spent years designing a headless, ergonomic guitar in his spare time and documenting the process online. The result looked like nothing else. No headstock, a body sculpted for playing position, fanned frets, and a patented neck shape called the Endure neck with a flat back designed to reduce hand fatigue. What began as forum experiments became a company when progressive players realized the strange-looking instrument solved real physical problems, especially for long practice sessions and complex modern techniques. Players like Pliny and Per Nilsson turned Strandbergs into the visual signature of an entire genre of modern instrumental guitar. The brand took the headless concept that flopped commercially into the 1980s and made it genuinely desirable, proving the idea was never wrong, just early. Sire. Sire is the brand that made professional-grade basses affordable by doing something unusual, partnering with one of the greatest bass players alive and giving him real design control. The Marcus Miller signature line launched with active preamps, rolled fingerboard edges, and build quality that reviewers kept comparing to instruments 3 times the price. And bass forums spent years asking what the catch was. There wasn't one. Sire followed the same playbook with guitars, bringing in Larry Carlton for a line of S-styles, T-styles, and semi-hollows with the same value formula. The brand builds in Asia and sells at volume with thin margins, betting that musicians talk to each other. They do, and Sire grew almost entirely on word of mouth into one of the most recommended beginner to intermediate brands in the world. Chapman. Chapman Guitars was founded in 2009 by Rob Chapman, a British YouTuber whose gear reviews and demo videos made him one of the most watched guitarists on the platform. The company's original hook was collaborative design, with viewers voting on specs, finishes, and features before models went into production, which made customers feel like co-designers rather than buyers. The guitars are built in Korea and Indonesia to keep prices accessible, and the brand grew alongside Chapman's channel into a genuine mid-market player. Chapman was arguably the first proof that a YouTube audience could be converted directly into a guitar company, a blueprint Suhr and others would follow with their own variations. Whatever the debates about individual models, the brand permanently changed how new guitar companies think about marketing. Today, a new guitar brand launching without a content strategy looks stranger than one launching without a dealer network, and Chapman is a large part of why. Harley Benton. Harley Benton is the house brand of Thomann, the enormous German online music retailer, and it exists to answer one question: how cheap can a genuinely playable guitar get? The answer turned out to be shockingly cheap. Built in Chinese and Indonesian factories and sold with no middlemen, Harley Bentons routinely deliver features like roasted maple necks and stainless frets at prices where competitors offer bare basics. The brand became a running theme on guitar YouTube, where reviewers kept filming themselves being reluctantly impressed, and the comment section phrase, "just buy a Harley Benton," turned into both a joke and sincere advice. Serious players now openly gig with them, something unthinkable for a house brand a generation ago, and the brand releases new models at a pace traditional companies can't match because it answers to a warehouse, not a heritage. No company has done more to collapse the assumed link between price and playability. Godin. Godin is Canada's biggest guitar maker, founded by Robert Godin, who built the company in the villages of Quebec where furniture-grade woodworking skills were everywhere and labor was affordable. The Godin family of brands includes Siegel, Norman, and Art and Lutherie, which together put solid top acoustics into the hands of enormous numbers of beginners at prices laminate guitars usually occupy. Under its own name, Godin builds electrics and hybrids, including nylon string and synth access instruments that show up on stages with players who need unusual tools. The company runs its entire operation in North America, with necks and bodies from Quebec, at volumes almost no one else attempts outside Asia. Godin never became a household name in the way its output deserves, but few companies have put more real wood in more first-time players' hands. Silvertone. Silvertone was the house brand of Sire, and for decades it was the first guitar an enormous share of American players ever touched. Sire didn't build anything itself. It ordered instruments from Danelectro, Harmony, Kay, and Teisco, names covered across previous videos, and sold them under the Silvertone badge through its catalog and stores. The most famous was the amp and case model built by Danelectro, a guitar whose carrying case contained a working tube amplifier, meaning a kid could get an entire rig for one catalog price. Chet Atkins, Jimi Hendrix, Jack White, and Beck all spent time on Silvertone somewhere in their stories. When Sears dropped the brand in the early 1970s, it ended one of the strangest arrangements in guitar history. A department store, building nothing, still managing to arm a generation of musicians. The name has since been revived by new owners, but the original catalog-era Silvertones remain the ones collectors hunt, especially that amp and case, which now sells for many times what a Sears customer ever paid. Vox. Vox is remembered as an amplifier company. The AC-30 powered the British invasion, but its guitars deserve their own chapter. Built in England starting in the late 1950s, Vox guitars chased original designs rather than American copies, producing the teardrop-shaped Mark VI, made famous by Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones, and the pentagonal Phantom, two of the most recognizable shapes of the 1960s. Vox also stuffed its guitars with strange electronics, including built-in fuzz, treble boosters, and even tuning references years before onboard effects became a category. The guitar line faded as the company's corporate ownership shuffled through the decades, and Vox today survives mainly as an amp brand under Korg. But for a stretch of the 60s, a British company was designing guitars that looked like the future while everyone else copied Fullerton and Kalamazoo. Original teardrops and phantoms are now serious collector pieces, valued precisely because Vox refused to build anything ordinary. Hofner. Hofner has been building instruments in Germany since 1887, starting with violins, and that string instrument heritage produced the most famous bass silhouette on Earth. The 500/1 violin bass was designed in the mid-1950s, a lightweight hollow body shaped like a cello's little cousin, and it would have remained a European curiosity except for one purchase. In Hamburg in 1961, a young left-handed bassist named Paul McCartney bought one, partly because it was affordable and partly because its symmetrical shape looked right flipped upside down. The Beatles happened, and the violin bass became permanently welded to the most successful band in history. McCartney still plays a Hofner at every show more than 60 years later, making it possibly the longest-running artist-instrument association in music. His original 1961 bass was even stolen for over half a century before resurfacing in 2024, making global news for an instrument that cost him about £30. A company older than recorded music itself ended up defined by one student-priced bass and one left-handed teenager in a Hamburg music shop.